I remember correctly, Justice Kavanaugh in that in his writings on that case basically said, well, you know, when American citizens are detained, it's briefly just to question them. We know for a fact that that's not how it's gone for many American citizens.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. Genuinely glad you are here for this one because this video had me stopping and rewinding multiple times. What you are about to watch is a panel of legal analysts, a congressman, and a conservative commentator going head-to-head over federal immigration enforcement, specifically whether agents on the ground are crossing legal and constitutional lines when they stop people, and whether the highest court in the country just gave them permission to do exactly that. The tension in this room is real, the facts being thrown around are verified, and the moment the host corners the conservative guest live on air is something I was not expecting. Do yourself a favor and stick around until the very end because the Supreme Court revelation that gets dropped in the final stretch completely reframes everything said before it, and I promise you will want to hear my take on that. Also, before we jump in, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are watching from right now. Honestly, I love seeing where this community is coming from, so let me know your city or country down below. Alright, let's get into it.
The way these lawsuits, and we've seen now at least 4 of them, right? California, Oregon, Illinois will be heard tomorrow, D.C., they are going to be decided based on the realities on the ground. And essentially, if I can sort of boil down what the various decisions have been, is that we, the federal courts, are going to give the president deference. In fact, great deference. We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt about if he says there's an emergency necessitating National Guard or other military. However, he can't just make it up. He can't just send military or other troops into a situation where there is no genuine threat to federal assets, federal resources. And the reason we're getting different results, I mean, California, he was allowed to deploy. So far, he's been blocked in Oregon. We'll learn tomorrow probably about Illinois, is because you have different facts on the street. So analysis of the kind of video we just looked at, testimony from people on the streets, that's what's going to be make or break in these lawsuits.
So, Congressman, I'm going to play, this is an interview with the Border Chief, Greg Bovino. He was talking to our colleague, Priscilla Alvarez, about when they decide to stop people. And here's what he said.
Perhaps you look panicked when you see a Border Patrol agent. Perhaps you look scared. Perhaps your demeanor changes. Perhaps you're gripping the steering wheel so tightly that I can see the whites of your knuckles. There's a myriad of factors that we would look at to develop articulable facts for reasonable suspicion.
So if you're scared, apparently that is, according to him, reason for them to arrest, detain, whatever. I mean, what do you think when you hear that?
Well, you have to add in the fact that many of these ICE agents are masked, they're plainclothes, they're unidentified, and they're violent. So yes, people are going to be scared because you have these unidentified masked agents who are screaming and violent and using excessive force a lot. So naturally, you're going to be scared. And we're seeing it all over the country. We're seeing it here in New York, where an ICE agent shoved a woman to the ground who was lamenting the fact that her husband had been taken. By the way, both of them were here with an asylum application ongoing. So that is a lawful pathway to get here. He was originally suspended and then was reinstated for some undetermined reason. This is going on all over the country. It is excessive, and the American people recognize that we can have a robust immigration enforcement system without this kind of violence.
That's absolute
and
crap.
Without
I'm going to jump in on that and say
police,
that's absolutely not true.
Mafioso.
What you just watched is actually one of the most important legal conversations happening right now. And I need you to understand something before we even get into the details. The courts are already pushing back. Multiple states, multiple judges, all looking at the same question. Is there actually a real justification for what's happening on the ground? Or is someone just making it up as they go? And here is what blew my mind immediately. Ellie laid it out clean. She said the federal courts are giving the president deference. Great deference, her words. But even with all that deference, there is still a line. And that line is this. You cannot send military forces into a situation where there is no genuine threat to federal assets. That is not a liberal talking point. That is a federal judge drawing a boundary. Now here is where it gets personal for a lot of people. They played a clip of Border Chief Greg Bovino explaining how they decide who to stop, and Greg literally said, "Perhaps you look panicked when you see a Border Patrol agent, perhaps you look scared, perhaps your demeanor changes." Let that sink in for a second. Being scared is now a factor for reasonable suspicion. You have to understand why that is so deeply problematic, because the congressman made a point that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. He said many of these agents are masked, plain clothes, unidentified, and violent. So think about this from a regular person's perspective. An unidentified masked person is rushing toward you and you look scared, and now that fear becomes the justification to detain you. That is a circular trap with no exit. And then he brought up the case in New York. An ICE agent shoved a woman to the ground. She was not a criminal. Her husband was not a criminal. Both of them had an active asylum application, which is a legal pathway. The agent was suspended and then reinstated for reasons nobody can explain. The congressman called it what it is, a secret police mafioso. And honestly, when you look at the facts he just laid out, it is very hard to argue with that description.
Criminalize the law enforcement. You just pretended there for a moment that for some reason the law enforcement is the only one who's masked and violent and the protesters are showing up and blocking ICE vehicles and raining bricks down on their roof and wearing masks themselves and being thugs to the media for that case. I mean, why aren't we caring about the media who are being attacked? The reality is the boots on the ground,
They all
the
should.
troops, the boots on the ground, the troops, the law enforcement, they are the ones who deserve deference in this, not the protesters. And I think what the American people are really sick of is the idea that Antifa and thugs and people who want to protest the police and paid agitators who come from out of state, they can show up and do whatever they want, and that people will go on the air and say, the law enforcement really needs to calm down. No, how about this? Protesters stop showing up with masks on. Protesters stop showing up and
we
attacking
just saw a
police.
video where they were doing nothing.
Do protesters need to not be masked, but ICE agents can be masked?
Well, ICE agents have to be masked because they're being
ICE
doxed
agents do
and
not
shot
have
at.
to be
Absolutely.
They're not
masked.
being-
ICE agents do not
There are
have
apps
to protect
that
their
dox them.
safety.
Hold on a second. There are ICE agents. I watch a lot of these videos, okay? There are some that are masked and some that are not. So clearly, even within the same group of ICE agents that are conducting the same operation, some choose to go masked and some don't. They don't have to be masked. But my question is a lot simpler. Is it okay for protesters to be masked if ICE agents are masked? Is it?
Is it okay for protesters to be
Yeah.
masked? If they want to wear a mask, it's fine, but why are we complaining about the police? That's my point.
Well, we're
'Cause we're in a
complaining about them being
democracy.
masked.
My point
We
is,
don't have secret
if there are
policing.
apps that are being created, Abby, and that's the thing, there are apps that are being created that are the sole purpose is to dox ICE agents. And there are people showing up at their houses, and there are families
Listen,
being threatened. Why would we
I think
not?
all of that is terrible.
Do
But
you
I
know this
want-
for a fact? Because
I
I
do
keep
know this for a
hearing
fact.
this.
I do
have
know
not
this for a
seen
fact.
ICE. They
you're
keep
ignoring the
talking
facts.
about 1,000% upswing and all this stuff. I haven't seen examples.
We just
of
had
that.
shootings in Dallas and Alvarado, Texas at ICE facilities. You remember
Absolutely.
that, right? That
And
was actually people
I
died.
was very quick to condemn that. That's unacceptable, and those people should.
That's a clear
I mean,
example of
there-
what we're talking
there
about.
have-
This is the part of the conversation where the mask came off, and I mean that literally and figuratively. The conservative guest made an argument that I genuinely could not believe was said out loud on live television. He said protesters need to stop showing up with masks on, and almost in the same breath, ECE agents have to be masked because they are being doxxed. So let me make sure I understood that correctly. Regular citizens exercising their right to protest. No masks allowed. Armed federal agents with the power to detain you. Masks are fine and necessary. One rule for the powerful. A completely different rule for everyone else. And then the host did something that you rarely see happen in real time. Instead of just letting that argument sit there, the host pushed back immediately, and the point was razor sharp. The host said, "I watch a lot of these videos, and there are some ICE agents that are masked and some that are not within the same operation, so they don't have to be masked. That is not an opinion. That is a direct observable fact from the footage itself." The conservative guest had absolutely nothing to say to that. But here is what I want you to notice. When the host pressed the conservative guest on whether he actually knew for a fact that doxing apps were targeting ICE agents' families, the response was, "I do know this for a fact." And then immediately, because I keep hearing this, you have to understand the difference between those two statements. Knowing something for a fact and hearing something are not the same thing, and that exchange alone tells you everything about the quality of the argument being made on that side. Now I will give credit where it is due. The congressman was very quick to condemn the shootings at the ICE facilities in Texas. No hesitation, because that is what intellectual honesty looks like. You can oppose excessive force and condemn violence against law enforcement at the same time. Those are not contradictory positions. But notice how the moment he condemned it, the conversation immediately tried to use that as a way to redirect away from the original question about profiling and excessive force. Classic deflection, and the host recognized it and brought it right back.
Been attacks on ICE facilities.
There have.
It's important to note that. But I mean, what we were talking about before we got to this point was about their interaction in these stops, right? And the question actually to Bovino was about whether they were profiling people, whether they were just looking at people and saying, oh, you look Mexican, I'm going to stop. You look Mexican and you're scared. I'm going to stop you. And I think that's the question that a lot of people are wondering right now, is that where we are as a country, where you can just stop, not only stop people, but detain them, take away their liberty for any period of time just because of the way that they look?
No, we have enough evidence, though, brother, that there has been racial profiling, especially for precious Latino brothers and sisters who are legal citizens. That's the kind of terror that's unwarranted, and we've got to be concerned about the arbitrary use of power, especially from it when it's above. Now, we're not talking about demonizing any police or demonizing ICE. Now, I ran for president and I was trying to abolish ICE because I thought, in fact, that we ought to be able to relate to each other in such a way that we could talk about the rights and liberties of law enforcement, rights and liberties of citizens, because that's the only way you're going to have some mechanisms of accountability to keep what's left of the democracy alive. If we're dismissing arbitrary power from one camp and the other camp is only concerned about their camp, then you're not going to have any public life whatsoever.
Can you talk to us, Ellie,
election,
about
so,
some of these cases that are coming up where these judges are going to be deciding some of these issues, the use of force, who they're stopping, the arbitrary nature of it? I mean, there's a case where some families were literally picked up in a park in Chicago, a public park in Chicago.
To Dr. West's point, there was a Supreme Court opinion 3-4 weeks ago where the Supreme Court essentially said it's okay to profile, right? ICE agents in California were stopping people, not disputed, explicitly on the basis of whether they appeared to be from another country based on their skin color, if they were speaking another language, where they were, car wash, Home Depot, that kind of thing. I thought, no way the Supreme Court's going to approve this. And the Supreme Court, it was the usual 6-3 split, said that's okay, that's permissible, at least for the time being. I mean,
that's where the court is wrong.
Well, I was right, but I mean,
and
in criminal context, you could never do that. ICE, you know, in immigration, there's broader leeway, but that's where we are. That's the law at the moment.
If I remember correctly, Justice Kavanaugh, in that in his writings on that case, basically said, well, you know, when American citizens are detained, it's briefly just to question them. We know for a fact that that's not how it's gone for many American citizens, including some who have sued.
Yeah, and look, we take any detention, even a brief detention, that's an infringement on someone's freedom of movement and Fourth Amendment rights and others. And also, those brief detentions then lead to questioning, which then lead to sometimes more long-term detention. So very serious, very high stakes. I mean, you know, Dan, you're a lawyer too. I mean, I was shocked by that opinion.
Here is where this conversation stopped being just political and became genuinely historic, because the host asked the question that I think millions of people have been sitting with: is that where we are as a country, where you can stop someone, detain them, take away their liberty just because of the way that they look? And I want you to really let that question breathe for a moment, because it is not rhetorical. It is not dramatic. It is a legal reality that was just confirmed by the highest court in the land. Ellie dropped the bombshell. The Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, said it is permissible for agents to stop people based on their skin color, the language they are speaking, and where they are located. A car wash, a Home Depot parking lot. She said she thought no way would the court approve this, and they did. 6-3. The usual split. Now here's the part that people need to understand from a historical standpoint. There is a legal doctrine called the Fourth Amendment that has protected Americans from unreasonable searches and seizures since 1791. Over 200 years of legal precedent built around the idea that your physical appearance alone is not probable cause. What just happened in that Supreme Court ruling is a significant departure from how that protection has traditionally been applied in a criminal context. Ellie even pointed that out. She said in a criminal context you could never do this. Only in immigration law does this broader standard currently exist, and that distinction matters enormously. And then came the Kavanaugh point. The justification written into that opinion was that when American citizens are detained, it is brief, just questioning. But Ellie immediately responded with something that cannot be argued away. She said, "We know for a fact that is not how it has gone for many American citizens, and there are lawsuits proving it, real people, real cases, real extended detentions that started as a so-called brief stop." The legal analyst said she was shocked by that opinion, and she is a lawyer. When the people who understand the system the most are shocked by where it has landed, that is not a political talking point. That is a warning signal that something fundamental has shifted, and the conversation you just watched is proof that people are paying attention. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.